Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about some of the critical issues for Norsca in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and what I hope Creative Assembly will approve on in Tides of Torment. Norsca is one of the worst races in the game, and that's not just my opinion. Reddit recently voted on the subject of races in the game, and Norsca came out last. In fact, when it didn't come out last in the initial round of voting, people rejected that outcome to the point that it got changed. So just to understand where the community, even on Reddit, stands on the subject of Norsca. Now, what Creative Assembly has stated in their vlog is that they are going to introduce unique legendary lord mechanics for Trog and Wulfric. Maybe a change starting position for Wulfric. I imagine teleportation for Fang. We'll find out. Another thing that they've mentioned for Norsca in the recent video on what's next is that they're trying to figure out a way to make their racial aspect, which is focused on raiding, actually work. And that is important because the Norscan research tree does leave a lot to be desired. I mean, there is obviously useful stuff, but if you look at the research tree, there's all kinds of benefits that you gain over here by occupying certain settlements. Well, first off, it shouldn't be based on occupying settlements. I do obviously expect a technology tree update, but at the same time, Norsca should certainly be sailing around the world, at least Wulfric should be. Not necessarily Trog, he should have a different focus in his campaign. But if you're doing that, you need to have a mechanic for it. Because suffice to say, if you're playing a Norscan campaign, you're not even going to reach 4 of these settlements that are in the same tree, let alone all of these. And there's a lot. It's not just even 16, it's 19. And that's just putting it mildly, a lot of different skills. Maybe it should be unique to legendary lords, depending on where they're starting, something along those lines. We'll see. Or we need some way of navigation, maybe something unique to Norsca, with Wulfric having a significant advantage to that system. Like we have systems in the game. We can look at Khorne's teleportation with the challenges. We can look at the Wood Elves, obviously. We can look at Oxyatl. There's different methods. I would not want it to just be teleportation, but maybe more sea lanes, a lot more sea lanes exclusive to Norsca that would start in Norsca or near their starting positions. I think that would make a lot of sense. Something else that they've mentioned is that they're going to update monster hunts, which is very welcome. Monster hunts right now are pretty broken. That's because Norsca is a Warhammer 1 race that has never really gotten an update. That's one of the reasons it's so bad. And the problem with the system that they have is it bugs out. So it's not just the annoyance of having to do like objectives as you did in Warhammer 1. It's also just the sheer number of issues. So for instance, I have an objective. I have a second monster hunt for Sagor right here. And it requires me to raid Middenheim. Well, what happens if Middenheim gets raised, even by myself, before I raid it? That breaks the quest. So an update to the system will be very welcome. I admit that listening to the developers talking about it in the video didn't necessarily encourage me, because it's like, oh, you're going to have different monsters to hunt depending on the region you're in. I really hope that doesn't end up being a grind. Certainly it will probably be better than what we have, at least more workable, but that is a big problem with regards to Norsca. So issues with monster hunts, issues with tech, the obvious things that we expect Creative Assembly to improve on. But then there is the biggest issue of Norsca by far, and that issue kind of ties together in monster hunts, because the favor of the gods, you can gain that through monster hunts, dedication to gods. This is crucial because these kind of benefits, and yes, the UI is so buggy that it creates problems, so I hope they fix that when you're moving over something. But anyway, these kind of benefits are crucial because Norsca's economy is pretty limited. You do gain a good amount of income from port, so gaining this favor from, say, Slanesh, with upkeep, Lord or crew rank, income from ports, unique characters, all very well and good. But the issue is how you gain it. You can gain some through monster hunts, but the primary way of gaining this favor with the gods is raising settlements. So just looking at Kislev over here, which by the way I should be occupying for research. Ignore the auto-resolve result. I would obviously have to fight this battle, but this is uneasy. If I just auto-resolve this, here's where a big problem comes in for Norska. In the post-battle situation with a settlement, you can either raise it and dedicate it to a particular god. You can sack it for money, or you can occupy it. Now, the fact that Norska is a kind of race that does actually want to occupy settlements, as opposed to raising them, does pose in itself an issue. We're not talking of a corn situation. For corn, it works to raise a lot of settlements because you have an automatic system of rebuilding. I don't know if Norska should have a system like that. I'm not going to touch on that, but it is an issue because you do want settlements. You actually want settlements far more than corn in some ways because your economy depends on that, your recruitment hero capacity. Again, more so than corn. But if we look at the situation, you only gain favor. You lose some favor with the ones you're not dedicating to. You gain favor with the one you're dedicating towards, but you don't gain money. So you're not sacking a settlement. You're missing out on the sacking income, which is a big problem because Norska's economy is dependent on sacking settlements. Also, I have to say that it is annoying to have Skilla for both Corn and Norska requiring you to raid settlements. Like, if you're raid regions for raiding income, it's annoying because if you're playing any Corn campaign, you don't have freaking time to raid settlements. But even for a Corn campaign, it kind of could work better because you at least gain movement range. You don't gain movement range. And even worse, you can't even put yourself in a camp stance, in a raiding camp, in the way the Greenskins can. Because the Greenskins actually can play Norska better than Norska. Because Greenskins can raise settlements. You don't want to raise settlements. You want to sack them as Greenskins. But you can sack, you can raise settlements, and have movement range to at least put yourself in a camp because it doesn't require movement range. Norska requires movement range for their camps, and that is a problem. On top of that, again, you're sacrificing money, so the best thing you can do in a Norscan campaign, here's how you play it. If you want to actually have an economy because your income is pretty awful, you sack a settlement one turn, then the next turn, you raise it with one army, and then you occupy it with another. Now, over here, I don't have another lord following Trog, but that is the ideal way to play a Norscan campaign. It is broken. It is really frustrating. It is really annoying, raising settlements, and then occupying again because you want them. If only for research. And yeah, so sacking, raising, occupying in that order is not a good dynamic, and this is the number one issue above everything else. Every other issue with the unit roster, with heroes, with economy, etc., that does need to be improved for Norska. Speaking about the economy, though, and unit roster, a lot of the Norscan units do leave a lot to be desired. Obviously, we're going to get more units, but it's also the quality of these units. So auto-resolve is a problem. Creative Assembly has mentioned that they're going to improve on that. But yes, if you play battles with Norska, their army can be decent in quite a few situations. But if you auto-resolve with Norska, don't. Unless you're playing on easy, which what I just showed. But even then, I took a lot of damage. So a lot of units lack armor. There are some interesting things, but they're locked behind higher tiers. Like, War Mammoths should probably be tier 4, for instance, just an example. Realistically, though, the units that might perform better, like Marauder Champions, well, they take 2 turns to recruit, and while they are a pretty good tier 3 unit, actually they're a ridiculously good tier 3 unit, on par with Cast Warriors in some ways, but they do take 2 turns, and they also cost a lot. I mean, it's not too crazily expensive as far as overall economies go in Warhammer 3, but it is crazily expensive as far as Norska goes. Unless you have a lot of favor with a particular god or multiple gods, and that's kind of the silly part, because you actually don't want to just max out favor with one, because you're going to end up limiting economy. You kind of want to get 2 or 3, at least to 40% to max out your port income. Unless you're doing that, your income is going to be limited. You do have all port tiers up to tier 3, so minor settlements can generate a good amount of money. But ports are always going to be a bottleneck. They're more costly to upgrade than most settlements. The income itself, they are more vulnerable because the AI may not march over land long distances to attack you, but they will attack you via the sea in that situation. So that is a problem. Ports create vulnerabilities. Your inland income, and your income from sacking settlements is limited because of the dynamic I described earlier, so your income ends up hurting quite a bit. Otherwise, your income as Norska is so pathetic that the regular income building is not even worth freaking building in a lot of cases. You start with 50, then go to 100, 150, no modifiers. They actually used to be double this, and then of all the campaign changes that Creative Assembly made in Warhammer 3 and Immortal Empires, you know, we've talked a lot about how CA doesn't want to make racial changes. The one freaking change that Creative Assembly made early on in Immortal Empire's lifespan was to nerf Norska's land-based economy in half. And that screwed them over significantly. Revert that change, thank you very much, or at least give us some different ways of earning income or reducing upkeep. I mean, the camp itself can reduce upkeep by 20%, but you realistically a lot of the time can't afford to switch in a camp stance unless you're moving from a province, but given region densities, like settlement densities, you're not going to use that camp all that often. So that is a problem. You do have like this growth building, which increases your income from post-battle loot in all armies and adjacent regions, which kind of useless, not going to lie about it, unless you're playing defensively, which is like the worst way of playing Norska. And finally, usual stuff that I would describe in a lot of reworks: hero capacity, hero situation. So here's the thing. You can get 2 heroes at tier 3. You increase capacity for both of them at tier 3. Okay, decent enough. We're going to get the 4th to add to the 3 that we already have for Norska. Here's the problem, though. Norska is the kind of race that takes a lot more damage in battles. That's fine if you have casualty replenishment. Well, guess what? Wereskins don't give casualty replenishment as a hero. In fact, that's the big problem. You have magic users, they're decent enough, but Wereskins give control and training. Whereas if we look at the sorcerers, they spread corruption and give scouting. Your casualty replenishment hero, you do have it at least, is at tier 4. Can only be recruited at tier 4, can only increase capacity at tier 4, the Bale Fiends. And that is a huge problem for Norska. This is one of the things that hurt the dwarves pre-rework, but here's the thing that made it work for the dwarves. Even though Dragon Slayers are, they are acquired later on in a capacity increase at tier 4, dwarves have ways of increasing casualty replenishment. They have skills with lords, they have research 5%, and they have heavily armored units, which inherently take less damage in auto-resolve or manual battles. Doesn't matter which one we're talking about. So that ended up working for dwarves, even if you don't own Front's Decay. Norska inherently has casualty replenishment with a hero, but is inaccessible for when it matters. Trog starts with one, Wolfric doesn't. Trog inherently is better because of that, but it's only one of them. So that is an issue. Yes, I know, you do have a way of improving casualty replenishment by 20% for the Crow's Gaze, but you're going to be missing out on some other things. So you either sacrifice your economy or casualty replenishment is not a great dynamic. So I think that's something that can be improved. It can work in a long term in the campaign. It's really an early game situation. But unit roster, unit stats, upgrades, research, buildings, all that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of things that CA should improve on for Norska. That's my overall perspective on the key areas that I hope Creative Assembly focuses on. Please let me know what you guys think on this subject. Maybe we could talk about the vassal factions for the Warriors of Chaos. Maybe we could talk about Warriors of Chaos in general and their dynamics in a campaign. But that's all I had to say. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys would like to see addressed by CA. Costin signing out.